The Office of Personnel Management was the target of the attack, but data from nearly every government agency was stolen. U.S. investigators say they believe Chinese hackers were behind the breach. While the Republican field is packed with male candidates, so far, some of the sharpest Clinton critics have come from women. Democrats successfully campaigned on an alleged GOP-perpetrated war on women in 2012, but faltered in 2014 when they tried the same tactic. With Hillary Clinton as the likely Democratic nominee, the fight for women voters will be a central part of the 2016 campaign.
Charles Darwin published his paper, On the Origin of Species, in 1859. It is one of the most well-known pieces of scientific literature in human history. In the paper, Darwin proposes the theory of natural selection. He states that for any generation of any species, there will always be a struggle for survival.
One of the unidentifiable objects in this study lies just outside Centaurus A, NGC 5128, an elliptical galaxy located about 12 million light-years from Earth. The other is in a globular cluster of stars found just outside NGC 4636, another elliptical galaxy located 47 million light-years from Earth in the constellation Virgo. A recent trend in the entertainment world is to adapt classic works of literature for either TV or movies. One argument is that this is to everyone's benefit, as it introduces people to works they might otherwise never have, but is rarely done successfully. Networking is easy and fun because it taps into this human predilection to talk about ourselves when asked. Consider successful networking as little more than the process of guiding a person to tell you about his life, what he's doing, the company that employs him, and his current industry. The second group that is particularly vulnerable are night shift workers, and the third group that is Particularly vulnerable are people with sleep disorders, particularly sleep apnea. 1 out of 3 men and 1 out of 6 women have sleep apnea. And yet, 85% are undiagnosed and untreated. And it more than doubles the risk of cancer. Parents need to take control of the television viewing of preschoolers and children of early school age. A workable technique is to make a simple but firm weekly plan as to what programs will be permitted and how much time overall may be spent in viewing. Any child's weekly schedule normally involves a certain amount of time for school, naps, outdoor play and indoor play. Karl Marx is arguably the most famous political philosopher of all time, but he was also one of the great foreign correspondents of the 19th century. During his 11 years writing for the New York Tribune, their collaboration began in 1852. Marx tackled an abundance of topics, from issues of class and the state to world affairs. At the beginning of each fiscal year, funds are allocated to each state account in accordance with the University's financial plan. Funds are allocated to each account by objects of expenditure. Account. Managers are responsible for ensuring that adequate funds are available in the appropriate object before initiating transactions to use the fund. Environment problems caused by hard rock mining involve water pollution by metals themselves, chemicals used in processing, acid drainage, and sediment. Metals and metal-like elements in the ore are toxic and prone to cause trouble by ending up in nearby streams and water tables as a result of mining operations. Botanic gardens are scientific and cultural institutions established to collect, study, exchange and display Plants for research and for the education and enjoyment of the public. There are major botanic gardens. In each capital city, zoological parks and aquariums are primarily engaged in the breeding, preservation, and display of native and exotic fauna in captivity. In a genuine republic, the will of the government is dependent on the will of the society, and the will of the society is dependent on the reason of the society. In Federalist 51, for example, James Madison claimed that the extent and the structure of the government of the United States make it dependent on the will of the society. Botanic gardens are scientific and cultural institutions established to collect, study, exchange and display plants for research and for the education and enjoyment of the public. There are major botanic gardens. In each capital city, zoological parks and aquariums are primarily engaged in the breeding, preservation, and display of native and exotic fauna in captivity. How quickly is the world's population growing? In the United States and other developed countries, the current growth rate is very low. In most developing countries, the human population is growing at a rate of nearly 3 people per second. Because of this bustling growth rate, the human population is well on its way to reaching 9 billion within lifetime. Your body's composed of trillions of cells, lots of different types of cells that make up different organs and other parts of your body. Your body is also where 10 times that number of bacteria call home sweet home. But don't be afraid, these bacteria do more good than harm to you. And besides, just in case you wanted to strike up a conversation with your tenants, you and your bacteria do have a few things in common. In the past 50 years, the amount of water in the open ocean with zero oxygen has gone up more than fourfold. In coastal water bodies, including estuaries and seas, low oxygen sites have increased more than tenfold since 1950. Scientists expect oxygen to continue dropping even outside these zones as Earth warms. When countries assess their annual carbon dioxide emissions, they count up their cars and power stations, but bushfires are not included presumably because they are deemed to be events beyond human control. In Australia, Victoria alone sees several 100,000 hectares burn each year. In both 2004 and the present summer, the figure has been over 1 million hectare. Food is one of the most important things you'll ever buy. And yet most people never bother to think about their food and where it comes from. People spend a lot more time worrying about what kind of blue jeans to wear, what kind of video games to play, what kind of computers to buy.